Our house before this, we had stink bugs, really bad. And I would be teaching, and then all of a sudden in a lesson there would be a stink bug on the wall, and I just can't. I can't. Hey everybody, I am here today and I'm going to talk to you about my experience teaching. So as some of you probably know, I am an opera singer, and I started out with my education and I went to CMU first for my bachelor's in music, and then I went to OSU, the Ohio State University, for my master's, and there I was a GA. And I taught some of their group classes, so people that were non-majors, and they all came together as a group, and there was a certain curriculum that they were supposed to have, and a book, and I kind of had free reign as the teacher. And then I was like, you know what, let's make this more fun, because they were a little bored, I think, and so we jazzed it up a little bit, and we kind of made it into a little scenes program, which was a lot of fun. And then at IU, Indiana University, I didn't teach as much over there, and then once I finished my PD over there, I moved back to Marysville, and then I picked back up some of my students that were over there. And so then that's kind of where the teaching in the music school came about. So both my husband Paul and I were teaching students in the Marysville area, and first we started out teaching in this apartment that we had in it was Dublin, and it was a really small apartment, and the students would come to the apartment and it would just be this tiny little space, and then we'd have to worry about the neighbors hearing and everything. And then we ended up moving to a house in Marysville, which was one step closer, and we started teaching out of the house, and then it got to the point where we were teaching at the same time, and we had to use two of the rooms, and so we had to use the main room, and then we had people walking up our stairs into the spare office, the spare bedroom that we had at that time. And so it got kind of awkward because all of these people in our house at the same time, it didn't feel like there was really much privacy, and we also wanted to feel like we wanted something more professional. And so we ended up meeting one of my dear friends now, and she has a dance studio, and then we said, well, hey, let's see if we can kind of work together. And she had a spare space, and so we worked in making 3 rooms out of that space, and then we started teaching, and so we had 3 rooms there. And first it was just Paul and I still teaching over there, and then we met Christina, and Christina ended up teaching for us too, and it was so nice. She's one of the sweetest people ever. And then from there, she started teaching last year, so this will actually be her 1-year anniversary teaching for us this fall. And since then, now we have 8 additional teachers in 1 year, and so which is really cool. And so we're trying to fill up the rooms as much as possible. And so there's both Paul and I teaching, and then we have other voice teachers, and we have a strings teacher, and we have a TOTS program, and we have some all-around teachers that are doing things. And we just have Emerson, which he's amazing, and he's going to teach like 1,000 different instruments, which is really exciting. So that's how the music school came about. And then I wanted to talk to you about my favorite things about being a teacher, and then my not so favorite things about being a teacher. So my favorite things include just being able to feel like I'm a mentor and making a difference in the next generation. There are so many things that I'm passionate about, and so many things that I feel like the experiences and the education that I've had in my life, I can bring that to other people, and that seems and feels rewarding and fulfilling to me. And there's a lot of times where my students will say things like, this is my therapy sessions, and sometimes we end up talking, and we talk about things that are deep or personal to the students. And I think it's really special because I'm kind of someone from the outside that's not really interconnected with their school life or their social life, and somebody that they're able to trust. And so I feel like it's very rewarding to feel like I can give therapy in a way to them, and use the music and use the lessons to help them grow in confidence. And so I have a couple stories of some fun things that have been my experiences in teaching. One thing is I had a student and she had the lead role in a play, and there was a piece that she was supposed to sing. It was her big solo number, and she had to sustain a certain note that was slightly outside of her comfort zone. Usually she would sing it in her head voice, and we were playing around with, well, this is kind of supposed to be a bigger part of the section, it's supposed to be really dramatic, so let's try belting this. And in the course of the lessons in that season, she ended up being able to do it, but she really wasn't comfortable doing it. And so, but I had heard her do it and in her lessons, and I knew that she was capable of doing it. And so it was the week of the show, and she was getting all in her head about it, and we had the lesson, and we really didn't sing much at that lesson at all. We ended up talking through things, playing with the mind games and the mindset and the mental games and everything like that. And then we ended up talking about the worst case scenario and what you would do and how you would handle it. And then she left, and then I went to go see the show, and the whole time I was freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen when she gets to this part? And she nailed it. And it was that moment that I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. She knew that she could do it deep down, and I loved being a part of that process in whatever way that I played a part of it, to just feel like I could help her discover that and help and support her to do something that she was already capable of doing. So that was really exciting. And then I had a student that here in Marysville, there's show choir is really big, and they have a really great show choir program. And so I ended up, I had a student that really wanted to get into it, and a lot of our students really want to get into show choir. And so she auditioned and she didn't make it, her first year doing it. And she was so determined. I have not seen a student really do the things that she has done in her determination to make it into show choir, but she kind of went a little crazy in a way, in a good way, and she would work so hard, and I would continue to push her, and we worked for an entire year. And she would do things like, for show choir they're singing and dancing at the same time, right? So she would do things like go on her treadmill and sing as she was on her treadmill. And so it was fun to watch her and see that. And then that year she ended up making it, and I was so freaking excited, because it was so cool to see how when a student works so hard and they have everything, they put their mind to it, and then they end up doing it. And it was like, yes, it was really exciting. And also some fun moments have been when we have students that are interested in going into music. And so it's fun to feel like, oh, I am their music teacher, and all of a sudden they have this interest in going into music too. And it's very exciting, and it's very rewarding to feel like, okay, what can I do? I want to help you in every way that I can, because you ended up wanting to be something that I'm doing right now. And another thing that was really exciting was in lessons for the Broadway program this summer. Actually, I cast a student in a certain role, and she actually had to belt a little outside of her comfort zone. And in her lessons, she was really timid. And then on stage, she was really timid in doing it. And I just kind of kept pushing her in her lessons. And then one of her lessons, she all of a sudden belted and she did it, and then on stage. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what we've been trying to do this whole time. Like, what helped you come to this moment? And she said, well, you know, I've just been really thinking about it, and I realized that if I don't do it in my lessons or even in my warm-ups, I'm not going to be able to do it on stage, and I really want to be able to do that, and I'm getting more comfortable with it the more that we're doing it. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what we're trying to get after as well. So those are some really exciting moments that I've had teaching, my favorite things about teaching. And then some not so favorite things about teaching are, so there's been times, I'm not a bug person at all right? And at our house before this, we had stink bugs, really bad. And I would be teaching, and then all of a sudden in a lesson, there would be a stink bug on the wall. And I just can't handle that at all. And so the student, actually, luckily the student was a high schooler, and they were like, oh yeah, I got it, no problem. And so the student had to take care of it. But then there was another moment where I was teaching, and there was a 6-year-old student, and I was freaking out because there was a stink bug and it was kind of flying around, and then I was supposed to be the courageous person, right? Not happening at all. And she was freaking out because she was like, oh my gosh, she's a bug! You know, I was feeling the same way. So I had to run downstairs and get Paul and he had to take care of it. So that was one experience. And there was also, so since I had Molly, and then we had quarantine and everything, I was teaching, and I have been teaching outside where the students come and they have a lesson outside, and I have the piano set up in the garage. There was a bird that flew in the garage during the lesson, and then it couldn't figure out how to get back out. And so I was freaking out because there was this bird that was like, you know, flapping all around, and it would go, here's to the top lip of the garage, and then the bird would just kind of like go over here, and then I was standing right underneath here, so it was just flapping away, and I was like, oh my gosh, is it gonna come and get me? And the student was scared too, and so we ended up having to move, and we just had our lessons on my front yard because I couldn't handle being in with the bird, and so eventually it got out because I had the rest of the lessons that day outside in my front yard, and then eventually it was fine. So that was another thing. Another thing that has been challenging is for me finding the balance between now being a performer myself and being a mom and then being a teacher, because before I had about 60 students, and that was before I had kids. And so then in that process, and I have a hard time saying no sometimes to people, so anyone that wanted to study with me, I would just be like, yeah, sure, why not? And I would just make time for them and have really, really long days. And then now, all of a sudden, with 2 children, life is very much so different, and I have to really think about my priorities and what is the most important thing. And so in doing that, I realized that I can't teach as much as I would like to. So that's been hard, because when I had Molly, about 80-90% of my students ended up going to study with Paul. And that was great. It was perfect timing because he had actually just left his current full-time job that he was at, and so he had the ability to do that. But since then, there's been about 40 students that used to be mine, and they're in wonderful places. They're in good homes. They're with some of our other teachers and with Paul, and I know that they're in really good hands. But I think there's a part of me that's like, oh, you know, I really should work to get them back in my schedule at some point, and kind of finding that there's the feeling guilty about that and not really knowing exactly when, but just saying, okay, you know what, priority right now is my kids. They're really, really young. They need me a lot. I'm up in the night shift a lot of times when the nights are bad, and so there's just only so much that I can handle. And also another thing that I struggle with sometimes is in performing and everything, I didn't really have to worry about the business side of things, and I didn't learn, unfortunately, I didn't learn a whole lot about owning your own business when I was in music school. And so there was an element of, okay, now that Paul and I have this music school and we have a lot of different students and a lot of different teachers, and there's all these things to manage, and there's schedules, and there's billing, and there's getting back with families, and a lot of emails, and just building presence. And so all of that has been challenging because I didn't really learn that. So the things that I'm learning about that are just self-taught right now, and I'm trying to educate myself and listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot about that, because it is a totally different world from performing and then to owning your own business and being a small business owner, especially in this time right now. So that's definitely been challenging, and I've definitely missed performing. I still do, and I still plan to add it into my schedule more again. But just right now, the phase that I'm in, I have to say no to a lot more things, and I'm not going out and I'm not going to do a lot of auditions, and I haven't been doing a lot of auditions just because I feel like the place that I'm in right now is the priority with the kids. And probably the most challenging thing right now is that because I'm nursing Molly, and because of when we had to go in quarantine, she ended up not taking bottles well. She used to take bottles well, but now she doesn't because I never really left. And so and she's not to the point where she's really eating baby food or real food or anything like that. And so she's still quite dependent on me. And so I'm trying to build my fall schedule right now and figure out, okay, how many times am I gonna have to nurse her? And then am I gonna try to teach from home, or am I gonna try to go to the studio? I prefer teaching at the studio most of the time because it's easy and I just kind of feel in my element. And when I'm at home, there's half of my brain that's like kids. So it's better for me and my focus to teach at the studio. But then it's like, oh my gosh, well, she has to feed every 3 hours. So I either have to be back here or I have to be teaching from here. So that's been really challenging, is trying to manage all of that and figure out the schedule for that. So those are the things. That's my teaching background and how the music school has come about. And then the favorite things about teaching that I've experienced and my not so favorite things. And so please tell me in the comments, please tell me if you're a teacher, what has your teaching journey been like? What are you struggling with? What are some of your favorite things that you've had? And then also, if you're a student, have you had any crazy experiences in your lessons that you'd like to share? Hopefully not any with me, but maybe if you're the bug person, you can definitely say about the bugs. And so yes, please tell me in the comments, and it was so good to spend this time with you. So thanks so much. All right, bye guys.